Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today. My name is Ryan Endorf. I'm with the Office of Planning here at the Georgia Department of Transportation, and I'm excited to walk through an overview of our competitive funding proposal for the Transportation Alternatives and Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality, otherwise known as CMAQ, improvement programs. Before we begin the overview of the presentation, I want to give just some general housekeeping items. The format of today's webinar is going to be an overview presentation that I'll deliver, and then hopefully most of the remaining time, the majority of that time, will be spent answering any questions that you have. So there's a Q&A feature throughout this platform, and please feel free to submit questions at any time throughout the presentation. After my overview presentation, we will go through and read and answer as many questions as time allows. But we will also be posting later this week on our CFP webpage the questions that we received and responses. We will also be posting the PowerPoint slide deck and a recording of this webinar on there as well. And there will be more information about our next training session on that webpage, as well as a registration link. As a reminder, if you have any questions after this presentation, please feel free to email us to cfp_help@dot.ga.gov, and we would be more than happy to respond to those questions, and we'll try to get back to you as quickly as possible. So just a brief overview of our agenda today. I'll give an overview of the program, discussing some of the eligible applicants, as well as the eligible project types. We'll go over the application and submission information that you can expect to see when you go to apply, and then we'll briefly cover the application review, project evaluation, project award, and the schedule for this entire program. So the big overview, Georgia DOT, we are administering a competitive funding proposal for the federally funded Transportation Alternatives and CMAQ programs. The application period opened on September 15th, and we will be accepting applications through October 31st of 2025. Applicants will not need to specify which program you want to apply for. You'll be considered for both if you're eligible for both, but applications must be an eligible project type under either the TA or CMAQ programs. Let me explain the map on the right. So the CMAQ program has a geographic eligibility requirement, and basically program funding can only be used for projects that are located in non-attainment or maintenance areas. And so the areas in yellow there are those non-attainment and maintenance areas. Per the Federal Highway Administration's guidance, funding can be used for projects that are located in proximity to a non-attainment or maintenance area, as long as the benefits would be realized primarily within that adjacent non-attainment or maintenance area. The areas in green represent the TA eligible areas, and so for the Transportation Alternatives Program, we are competing the allocations that are administered by GDOT, so the under 5,000 population, the 5 through 50,000 population, the 50 through 200,000 population, as well as the any area funding. So that's why the entire state is green. So the yellow areas are eligible for both CMAQ and TA. The green areas are only eligible for TA because of that any area funding, as well as the other allocation categories. I will note that if you are in an area above 200,000 population, you will only be competing for the any area TA funds. If you're so your TMA or MPO that is administering their separate allocation, their process is going to continue as however they do their process, and so you need to apply separately through them for that particular pot of funding. So potential project types include roadway, transit, bicycle, pedestrian, intermodal, mobility services, and technology innovation investments, provided they're eligible for CMAQ or for TA. Applicants must be able to demonstrate a 20% local match on the requested funding support, and you must be able to cover the other 80% of project expenses to be reimbursed as invoices are submitted. And I'll note here too that previously expended funds should not be considered as part of your local match. There are some project types that may qualify for a higher share of federal dollars, including up to 100%, and often that's based on the project type, the population, or as well as the roadway classification. If you have more questions about the CMAQ or TA programs, please visit the Federal Highway Administration's website for those two programs. When this slide deck is made available on our website, those are hyperlinked, and so you'll be able to just click on those directly and go straight there. So this slide covers the eligible applicants under this program, and we're limiting applicants, the eligible entities, to up to 2 applications, and that is 2 total. So it's not 2 for TA or 2 for CMAQ if you're eligible to apply for both. The eligible applicants include cities, counties, transit agencies, natural resources or public land agencies, school districts and schools, tribal governments, any other local or regional governmental entities with responsibility for oversight of transportation or recreational trails, as well as regional transportation authorities, including MPOs. The footnote below is meant to clarify, I think, the eligibility for MPOs to be a direct applicant. So for MPOs in CMAQ eligible areas, you can apply as a direct applicant for funding under the CMAQ program. However, for the Transportation Alternatives Program, direct applications from MPOs are limited to those in small urbanized areas with a population under 200,000. So if you're an MPO with a population above 200,000, you are not eligible to apply directly for TA funding support. So the next couple slides discuss what you'll need as you're completing the application and what you can expect to see. So on our website, you will see a blank application that includes all of the questions that you can expect to provide. There are 6 sections total in the application. And we do recommend that you take a look at that blank application and begin drafting responses prior to beginning your application. It is possible to save your progress on your application. However, you would need to be using the same desktop and browser. And if the cache is cleared, you may lose your responses. So we do recommend that you take a look at the blank application, start drafting your responses, and then when you're ready to apply, you can just copy paste those over into the application itself. So first, we ask for general contact information so that we know who is applying and can know who to contact if we have any questions or need any follow-up information. If a project is being submitted that falls in multiple jurisdictions, we are asking that you provide a documented letter of support from the other jurisdictions that are involved. And we're not requiring this to be submitted at the time of application. As long as it comes in before the end of the year, that would be fine. And what we mean by that, I think, is if your project is entirely within your city limits. As an example, if you're the city of Smyrna and the project's entirely within your city limits, you don't need to go get a letter of support from Cobb County saying that obviously you're part of Cobb County. What we're meaning is if that project were to cross over into Marietta, as an example, then we would want to see a letter from Marietta just noting that they were supportive of the project. We would like to see if the intent is for another local entity to administer the actual project itself, we would like to see a letter of support for that, just to make sure that there's confirmation that they are going to administer their project on your behalf. So the next section, there's a project information section where we ask for a description of the project, and there's a number of click-down boxes where you can specify the project type with a little bit more detail. You can also provide a secondary project type if your project has multiple types involved. There's a section asking about the project justification, why you're doing the project, and some of the benefits that you expect to get out of the project, including safety, congestion relief, emissions, which obviously for CMAQ is an important component, and then a category that allows you to specify any other benefits you expect to result from the project. Project phases include that would be eligible include PE, right-of-way, and acquisition and construction phases. If you're looking to do a scoping study, you're more than welcome to apply. That's certainly ineligible. can be eligible, but it may not necessarily be as competitive as some of these other phases. There's a section asking for project and phase cost estimates, and when you put in the phase cost estimates, please make sure to include the total cost that includes both the local and federal contributions. So don't just put in the total cost for the federal funding. Make sure that the local contribution and match is included. And then there's a section where if you've already done PE as an example, you can provide documentation of the previously completed work on the project and any reports or other information that might have come out of that previously completed work. We are asking for documentation of your other funding commitments for the required match, such as your local funding or local or private funding at the time of application. Examples of what might work here would be a city or county resolution, an approved SPLOST project listing, or an award letter from a local government entity that is providing the local match. We are asking for this at the time of application, and it is our intent to have an annual competition for both of these programs. So if the scoping or the design of the project maybe isn't ready yet, or the ability to secure the non-federal match is not possible by October 31st, there will be another opportunity next year to apply. But please feel free to reach out to us, certainly if you know of any issues or time restrictions in being able to get that documentation. Send us an email, and that's something that we can look into. We are asking for a detailed description of the project location, which includes project limits, mile markers, and any other identifying features that might be helpful for being able to map the project. There is an opportunity to upload a GIS file if you have that. However, if you don't, within the application itself, there are a couple of mapping features that will help us, that would allow you to specify where the project limits are. We do have a video on our CFP website that details how exactly to use those mapping tools to map your project locations. And certainly, if you have any issues, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'd be more than happy to help you figure out how to do that. If your project is referenced in a local, regional, or state plan, we would love to know that. And so there's a section of the application that allows you to upload that information. And then finally, if your elected officials would like to submit a letter of support for the project, you're able to submit those up through December 31st, 2025. When you submit your application, what you'll end up getting is an email confirmation that will include a specific or unique ID number. And so if you what we would ask is if you're going to submit those local letters of support after October 31st, when you email us, make sure you email and put in the subject header the unique ID information so that we can match that email to the application you submitted. As well as if you've submitted an application and then you end up having another question, please use that unique identifier. That will really help us match your question to the application. So brief overview of kind of the time frame here. The application review period is going to begin as soon as on November 1st, after the close of the application period. And we're estimating that review and evaluation process will take approximately 4 to 5 months. The first part of that, we may be in contact with you to solicit any additional information that we may have. One thing, if you're applying for the CMAQ program in particular, there may be some outreach to you about the emissions calculator. We are planning to use ARC's emissions calculator because Federal Highways has taken their calculator off their website. And so we may be in touch if there's information that we will run the emissions calculator, but we may need to get some more detailed information from you on to be able to run that. So the application review process will consist of screening projects against CMAQ and TA eligibility and evaluation criteria. We will be considering the levels of local match as part of the project evaluation. So the more local match you're able to provide, that will be favorably factored in the project evaluation process. And we will be weighting local match contributions based on each community's job tax credit designation. So we're targeting to make project awards in the spring. and we will be communicating with all applicants on project awards, both successful applicants as well as unsuccessful applicants. And we will be coordinating with local applicants on the specific funding awards, the size of the award, as well as the potential funding year. So there's a possibility we may be able to fund future fiscal years, but that's something we would coordinate with the applicants. This slide here just has kind of a visual timeline of what I just described. As you can see, we're in the application submission period. The next slide has some of the details on our next training session. And again, we're kind of targeting next spring to make our awards. So with that concludes kind of the overview presentation. I will note before we get into the questions and discussion, our next info session is going to be next week on October 9th at 10 a.m. The plan is to make that even more of a question and answer kind of office hours style format. So really more focused, I think, on the questions that you may all have and trying to be as responsive as we can for those. As always, if you have any questions or need any assistance in completing the application, please contact us at the cfp_help@dot.ga.gov.
All right, Ryan, so we have a number of questions submitted, so I'm going to go through and kind of run through them in the order that we received them. And yeah, so can you talk about, does the applicant need to be LAP certified to apply for funding?
You do not need to be LAP certified to apply for funding. I will say that, certainly we would prefer that, yeah, but if you would like GDOT to administer the project, you can. The one thing I would say is just to make sure that you factor that into the project cost estimates.
Okay. Would a letter of commitment from the applicant be sufficient for documentation of funding commitments?
Is there any clarification? So it's just a letter of commitment?
I mean maybe just some examples of documentation of local funding that would be acceptable, whether city council resolutions or
if it's an approved SPLOST list, it's certainly an award letter from another local entity that is providing the match. I think we do need to see firm documentation that the money is available. Maybe that could be one that you just shoot us an email at the CFP_help address and ask and maybe clarify what exactly you have in mind in terms of submitting.
Okay, one I can answer, is the session recorded? If so, will it be available for review? Yes, we're recording the session. We'll be posting the recording on the CFP webpage, to which I posted the link in the chat. We'll be posting the full list of questions received and responses as well. Next question. Can we please revisit the MPO population count constraints for TA projects and provide a little bit more depth?
Sure, I'll go back to this. So the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act added the eligibility for MPOs that are in small urbanized areas, so those with a population under 200,000. So that's directly in the federal statute to be able to be an eligible applicant for TA funding. I think the areas above 200,000 get their own allocations, and so that may be why that they are excluded from that.
And somewhat related, I'm in Cherokee County, which is in the Atlanta TMA MPO. Can I apply for both TA and CMAQ in this call?
Yes. So if you're in an area that's yellow your application will be considered across both CMAQ and TA automatically. So you don't need to specify which program you're applying for. Now, there are some differences, I think, in the eligible project types under those programs. So, if you're applying for, say you're applying for a pedestrian or bicycle improvement, that would be eligible under both TA and it likely would be eligible under CMAQ as well, as long as it can demonstrate an emissions reduction. And so an example of that project would be considered automatically under both. If you had a project that was more was not eligible under TA, so didn't really have a pedestrian or bicycle or safe routes to school nexus, then that would only end up being considered under the CMAQ program. But if you're in the areas in yellow, you would be automatically applied or automatically considered and evaluated under both programs if you were eligible for both programs.
Okay. Can you provide some specific project examples for bike, pedestrian, and tech innovation that may be eligible?
I think you could do potentially like crosswalk warning signs could be something that's eligible. That might be maybe motion related.
Okay. I think you covered this with the previous one, but GDOT made statewide TA funds available to jurisdictions within the TMAs before. About this round, for example, the city of Savannah eligible for statewide TA funds.
Yes. So if you're the city of Savannah, you would be eligible. You'd only be eligible for the any area funding here, but you would be eligible to apply.
Can you give an average award range?
I don't have necessarily an average award range. We are limited to what is available under our apportionment for the two programs, and I will note that we have a larger carryover balance under the CMAQ program currently. We are willing to consider future fiscal years as well, although there may be some question. I think obviously the surface transportation reauthorization expires at a year from today. Just technically a year from tomorrow, but so there may be some changes when the federal the U.S. Congress reauthorizes these federal programs. So hard to say, but we would be willing to consider future fiscal years of awards. I don't think we have a maximum award size in mind. I think largely we're trying to see what projects are out there. For CMAQ, this is GDOT. This is the first time GDOT has administered the CMAQ program and competitive process in I think at least a decade. And so there's some areas maybe that didn't have access. Because ARC has been running the CMAQ program for the last several years. So we are interested to see what projects are out there. And I would say we're not committed to a maximum award size. So hopefully that answers the question.
I assume this is related to deciding whether the applicant delivers the project or GDOT, but how much should be allocated for GDOT administration?
I think that will depend on the project. It's hard to give you just an immediate answer with it. May be context specific too, depending on the phase of the project that you're applying for. I think certainly we have to follow the federal process with these projects, so that will require consideration of NEPA, and there may be more time involved to delivery. just depending on a number of factors. That would be a good question to email us, and we can get back to you, because again, I think there may be some context-specific details that may matter there.
Can you go over again the documentation that applicants are able to submit after the fact and what's required at the time of submission?
Yeah, so there's kind of three main things, I think. So the documentation that we want at the time of submission is the documentation of your non-federal match, whether that's local funding or private funding. I forgot to mention in the presentation that if you are interested in a Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank or GTIP loan, there is an opportunity in the application to indicate that interest, and that will be something that we consider as part of the evaluation process, application review and evaluation process. As far as documentation that you have a little bit more time on, that would be letters of support, say from your local elected officials or other parts of your community, as well as the documentation of if your project again crosses into multiple jurisdictions, that a documented letter of support. We're asking just to make sure that both jurisdictions are supportive of the project. Again, since the project would cross those boundary lines. So that one could be submitted, that one end of the year, as well as the letters of support from local elected officials or other community folks. That doesn't have to be October 31st.
One question, where's the link to the blank application to use as a template discussed? I can tell you there's a link both on the CFP webpage for the sample application, which is essentially a Word document where you can pre-populate your responses. There's also a link in the application itself to access, and we do suggest using that as a tool to collect your responses before entering in the actual portal. Ryan, can you confirm that an entity considering this program does not have to apply via their MPO for TA?
You do not need to apply via your MPO for TA unless you are seeking, unless your MPO has an allocation or a sub-allocation under TA and you are seeking that money. So if you are interested in, if you're in ARC and you would like you would like to fund your project using ARC's TA sub-allocation, then you would need to go through them for that. But you can apply to us for the any area funding if you were interested.
If a project was previously funded but significant changes have been made to the project, is it ineligible?
If a project was previously funded, but are you saying essentially either a change in scope or cost increases?
That's what I'm guessing. Yeah.
Okay. So that's a good question. So if a project was previously funded and has cost increases, then you should resubmit to us from here. If as well as a scope change, because I think at that point the project would be substantially different. We will honor awards made previously. This is mostly referring to the CMAQ program, I think. But if you had a future year, fiscal year award that isn't changing substantially, either through a cost increase or the project scope, those are things we would honor. And just please send us an email, and we can coordinate with you and ARC on that.
We have another MPO question. So to clarify, if an MPO with a population over 200,000, does that make you ineligible for TA?
No, because you are eligible as an MPO as a direct applicant.
They don't do, but yeah, I would clarify that.
So if you're an MPO that represents a population area over 200,000, you cannot directly apply for TA. Including the any area funds. If you are in an MPO that is over 200,000, you are eligible to apply for TA. If you're an entity underneath that MPO, the city, a county, etc.
Specific question, does preliminary engineering include construction drawings?
I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't know off the top of my head.
For some of these that we have to come back to, we will plan to reach out individually to coordinate responses, knowing that this is a unique question that you have. For the purposes of data inputs into the CMAQ calculator, would we be able to provide current count data based on the old ARC CMAQ calculator technical report, or will GDOT standardize and provide all those inputs during eval?
So yeah, we are going to use ARC's all the information that's on ARC's website for their calculator. You know, we will reach out to the applications that are eligible for CMAQ to maybe clarify some of that information. If you have it and are able to provide it in your application when you submit it, that's great. But that's something that we would follow up after the application window closes. But our intent is to use the emissions calculator that is on ARC's website along with their technical documentation. We've been told that Federal Highways is working on a revision to their CMAQ calculator that would otherwise be on their website, but we're not sure when that's going to be available. So because we don't know, and I guess our default assumption is it won't be available in the near future, we're going to make use of the ARC as emissions calculator.
Ryan, there are a couple questions about specific question in the application about whether they've completed any work to date, and then the subsequent question about describing the activities in federal compliance. I think it may help just to talk a little bit about the funding requirements for federal compliance with CMAQ and TA, and work that's expected to have been completed to date.
Yeah. So the federal process obviously is a little bit more involved. It will require NEPA. You know, I think yeah, I think if you have questions there, please send us an email and we can get back to you. I think we can help you fill that aspect of the application out, and whether you've been in federal compliance or not. Yeah.
Would continuing a pilot transit program, parenthetically operational funding, be eligible for CMAQ?
I believe that is an eligible expense under the CMAQ guidance. So, so I believe the answer is yes.
This is a good question. So for individuals applying for a technology-based project that's focused on improving transportation, but there's no real PE right away or construction, will it be considered?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would just be at the construction phase, right? So, you know, I think that's how you'd represent that in the application. And certainly if we have more questions about that, that would be something we could follow up with you after the application's been submitted.
All right, and then one more about City of Savannah area. Are you saying City of Savannah is eligible for core MPO allocation of TA funds as well as the GDOT allocation of the any area TA funds?
No. So, well, You may be eligible for the core MPO allocation of TA, but that decision will be made by the Savannah area MPO. And that is not something that will be done through this competitive process. So, if it's a project where you're looking for joint funding, some funding from the core MPO area as well as any area funding, we're not making the decisions for the Savannah MPO for how they allocate that funding. So you'd only be applying for the any area funding for under this.
One more project-based question. If we have a multi-use pathway that is part of TIA projects, can we utilize TA funds instead or use for any budget overages?
I think you can submit an application if you do have now have cost overruns. I think as long as it's an eligible project type under TA or CMAQ, I suppose you could apply, but
okay. I think that's all of the questions we've received. We'll continue to monitor the Q&A, but I think we've gotten through all of the ones that we've received so far, Ryan. And again, we'll be posting those questions to the website with responses, as well as the recording of this training and the slide deck that was presented. I think this is real quick, Ryan. This is a follow-up. For member jurisdictions to apply for CMAQ eligible projects, does the CMAQ funding assigned to an MPO need to be adopted or incorporated into the TIP before the application period of the grant closes?
I would say that could happen afterwards. I don't think that has to be formally adopted by the application period, because you wouldn't know necessarily if you were going to get funding. So that would happen after. I would happen after rewards are made, I would think.
Okay. And we've gotten a couple about the funding amount. So can you go back over that? What is the amount of CMAQ and TA funding available for this CFP? Can you kind of give the broad strokes on what's available now?
Yeah, it's a little bit easier for CMAQ. I think our carryover balance is fairly large. I think it's around 100 million, something like that. For TA, I don't have the numbers right now, simply because we are finishing up a TA round that the previous applications we solicited earlier this year, and so I don't have the exact balances there, but there are balances across the areas that we are competing funding for.
Okay, well, that is all the questions we've received, Ryan. So we will post these in responses before the end of the week and encourage people to reach out to cfp_help@dot.ga.gov with any subsequent questions.
So just going back to the federal requirements, both the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration have specific regulations related to transportation planning, environmental protection, procurement, and project management. And so those would be the requirements that we would be expecting for compliance with for using federal funding, including complying with Buy America, domestic preferences. That, sorry to blank earlier when I was responding to that question, but that's what is meant there. If you have questions about any of those specific areas, please send us an email and we can get back to you.
All right, Ryan. Well, thank you. And again, we'll be holding another info session October 9th at 10 a.m. We'll be posting the registration link on the CFP webpage. You're able to register for that. And as Ryan said, I think our hope is to provide more individual Q&A opportunities to work through specifics of your application. And you can always email the CFP email address to get specific advice on your application. So with that, thanks to you all for attending and Ryan for providing the overview, and we look forward to reviewing the applications. Thank you so much.